Hello, hello, how is it hanging, my lovely friends? It is I, your Rat Daddy, and today I bring you episode 4 of season 2 of the Clone Army series. And as I sit here and narrate to you, my friends, Wart and his squadron are awaiting the perfect time to infiltrate the ancient complex that we very well believe may be a staging ground or an assembly building for the new battle droids that we've been facing the last few episodes. But of course, naturally, there is only one way to find out. It's time for us to kick in some teeth and kick in some doors. In that order. We very quickly and easily took out the few battle droids guarding the front of the base, and then we checked out these doors to see which ones led where. 3 of the doors went nowhere, and then one of them had to be the correct one. Of course, though, we wanted to enter the building with style and pizzazz, so we chucked about 55 grenades at it until it finally exploded and turned to dust. Crimson and the heavy clones would then enter the building. Then, of course, following closely behind was Wart and the other clones that had come with us. They all crammed and crowded into this very dense and narrow hallway and began preparing to infiltrate the main part of the complex. This time around, Wart would use his blasters to completely melt through the plasteel door like butter. Then they all quickly infiltrated the base, taking out any droids and turrets they saw. After doing so, though, we found a power source in the corner of the room. It was just as we had suspected. Void power cells. It appears that remnants of our old arch nemesis are building these droids and sending to our base, as well as the other factions that are allied with us to try and take back their planet. But it'll take more than a few walking chunks of metal to stop us. It's about high time we start clearing out the rest of this base, killing any void remnants and battle droids that we find here. As the battle rages on, though, I find myself wondering just how many of these assembly buildings are still left on the planet. There could be many other ancient complexes or other outposts and buildings that actually contain void droid assembly buildings. I do find it interesting, though, because after destroying all of these battle droids and the void associates as well as the turrets, we began trying to clear out the rest of this massive ancient complex, and it appears that only a few of the rooms within the ancient complex were actually being used by void, so they must have recently set up shop here. However, we've yet to detect any void ships coming to or from the planet, so it was hard for us to understand really how they were getting their resources until we noticed this machine in the middle of the room. Of all people, Crimson said that he was familiar with this technology and that it was some type of teleportation device. He said he would check out the machine and see if he could pinpoint the last coordinates to find out where the void resources and associates and whatnot were coming from. Oh shit. Somehow I don't think that's what was supposed to happen. It would appear that Crimson's been sucked into a portal or teleported or something. All we really know right now is that he's gone, and we should probably take this machine back to base to see what we can figure out and how we can get Crimson back. So Wart and his crew loaded everything back up into their ship and began making the long trip all the way back home to the mainland to our base. Meanwhile, Napoleon and his squad were still at the UNSC base that they had saved, tending to their personnel as a Pelican was landing just overhead. They appeared to be UNSC reinforcements, but upon further inspection and after speaking with their corporal named Haley, it looks like they were actually a search and rescue party. The corporal then began questioning Napoleon about an ODST that was actually part of her brother's squad on a different planet to see if he knew anything about it, but Napoleon didn't have time for any of that because Wart was contacting him to explain that there was an urgent matter that needed his attention. So we ended up leaving the UNSC base and Corporal Haley to her own devices, and we began heading all the way back home to see what was going on. Shortly after landing, Wart began speaking with Napoleon about the situation with Crimson getting sucked into a black hole-like portal. We don't know if he's alive or dead, but we decided that we were going to try and set up this machine and work with it to see if there's some way we could bring him back or just find him. Now, unfortunately, we didn't have a Void Tech terminal, but we did have a UNSC terminal, and we ended up having Spartan Taylor and Private Ox, who were very familiar with such technologies. Private Ox said he had a lot of experience with UNSC warp drives, which is kind of the same thing, so we let him lead the charge on this one. But now, of course, while the Private is working on the teleportation device, we still have quite a bit of work to do here around the base. Since we've turned the empire of this planet into something of a puppet and or proxy, it's probably about high time we at least get started on focusing on the stars. Now, to go about doing so, we're going to need much bigger ships. We're going to need a ship that is capable of intergalactic travel. Now, we do have plenty of of ships that are capable of traveling through space and whatnot, but not intergalactically. You see, that is the key. Now, I do have a ship in mind that is definitely capable of doing such, and it is the Hammerhead Cruiser, but it is a little bit too big, as you can see. Okay, yeah, so it's absolutely massive. I mean, it is a gargantuan ship. And another thing with this ship is it takes a holy shit ton of resources, most of which we don't currently have. As it stands currently, I don't think we have a fraction of the steel or cloth it would take to build this ship, which is definitely something that we're going to have to begin working on as well. But something else that we need to work on for this ship is where we're going to put it. Now, of course, we could just build it somewhere on the map where there's a lot of trees and dirt, no walls, just kind of away from the base. But as we've seen time and time again, anything outside our walls, and really anything inside our walls, is not fully protected at all. But of course, having the ship in a newly built section of our base is going to be a lot safer than building it outside of the walls, so that's exactly what we're going to do. And I very, very, very desperately do not want to build this massive, expensive starship just to have it destroyed and us to have to collect all the resources again, preferably. Speaking of said resources though, we ended up having a bulk goods trade ship in the atmosphere, and we began trading with them to try and obtain some of the cloth that they have, as well as the steel, the two things that we really need for this massive ship. Realistically though, we have plenty of money to buy steel and cloth, and we can always mine steel as well, but this was nothing but a drop in the bucket for the gargantuan amount that it's going to take to build this ship. So we decided that we would also try and trade with some of the nearby settlements, the Outlanders, the Pig Union, etc., etc. And so that's basically exactly what we did, at least for a good amount of time. I just traveled from one settlement to another, purchasing steel and cloth and a little bit of uranium, because we still need to make some nuclear bombs, of course, and also a teeny tiny bit of chem fuel, but it wasn't a big deal because they always wanted to buy advanced components for their machinery, which are very expensive, and we had a whole heaping shit ton of them from all our fights with Void. Not that we really had any issue using silver for bartering and whatnot either. We had a whole bunch of silver. We had plenty of components. You already know we have all the resources we could ever need, except for steel and cloth, apparently. But all that work, all that trading, even after all that, this was still barely a fraction of what we needed, so we're going to have to do quite a bit of trading. Now, of course, though, we're going to need somewhere to put all these damn resources. Ever since that nuclear bomb exploded in our warehouse, we've been very messy and disorganized. So I decided to sit back, eat a little bit of lunch, maybe drink a cold Dr. Pepper, not sponsored, and just kind of watch our clones clean up the warehouse and just kind of organize everything in the base. But as I sit here and enjoy my little sandwich on lunch and my ice cold Dr. Pepper, not sponsored once again, I get sick of looking at Napoleon's bare face. We need to put a mask on that thing. I looked through the workshop looking for different types of masks and whatnot that I thought would go good for Napoleon. I don't want to use the Darth Vader mask or the Darth Raven mask or anything like that because it just doesn't feel unique enough to me. We need Napoleon his own mask. And at the end of the day, I was pretty happy because I ended up going with a more simple look for Napoleon. Instead of an actual helmet as a mask, we ended up just giving him a simple breather mask. And honestly, I think the mask goes perfect with his current set of armor as well as his dark and brooding hood, and I really think that it complements his cybernetic eyes quite well as well. He still looks extremely intimidating, of course, which is a big factor for Napoleon. We want to make sure that our enemies know that when they see Napoleon on the battlefield, they won't be going home. Now, of course, though, I didn't want to just give Napoleon a new awesome looking mask. I also wanted to make some other utility items for him as well, so I ended up building him a light jetpack. Now, this is not the best jetpack, of course, but it is going to be something of a precursor or prototype to other jetpacks that we'd like to test on Napoleon and our clones. But like I mentioned, this one kind of sucks. You only get one use out of it before you have to try and refuel it or recharge it, but I mean, it may get him out of a sticky situation, who knows. Now that that's taken care of though, it would appear that Private Ox has figured out the teleportation machine. He's managed to hack in and he believes that he's found the coordinates as to where Crimson was sent. However, since since we don't know what awaits us on the other side of that portal, we've decided to not go in guns blazing with a massive army, especially since we still need to try and defend our planet and our base here. We've decided to take a stealthy approach. Private Oxford here has decided to volunteer himself to go through the portal and try to locate Crimson and bring him home. Since we're going in stealthy, he's decided to not take a blaster because of the heat signature as well as the noise, of course, that they would make, and he's decided to take a heavy magnum, also quite loud though, and a UNSC combat knife, weapons that he's very familiar with. But with that, we bid you farewell. Godspeed, Private Ox. Godspeed.